Today's conversation is on how and why they seem to appear out of nowhere. How and why they seem to appear out of nowhere. I trust you noticed this. I've been having a lot of conversations lately with people on this very topic. It seems that, let's say, the individual imagines a kind of relationship they would like to have, or a kind of relationship experience that they would like to have, or a specific kind of person that they would like to meet. And even though, let's say, they look to this world made visible through imagination, and don't see evidence of these kinds of relationships, these kinds of relationship experiences, this kind of person, as they acknowledge that they already have what they desire in imagination, they found what they desire in the form of desire, as what they imagine it to be. Sure enough, some way, somehow, these kinds of relationship experiences appear physically. These kinds of people, let's say, who enjoy sharing these kinds of wonderful experiences with you appear. Even if, as mentioned, the individual looks to this world here and does not see anyone having that kind of experience or that kind of relationship. See, in the Bible it states, "Thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall come to pass." So I would like to share with you personal experience of what I'm talking about here, of how and why I personally believe they appear the way you imagine. Even if there's, let's say, no visible proof, no proof via the five senses of this kind of experience or this kind of relationship existing or have ever been, let's say, existed. It is helpful to have this conversation because we could say, based on what the Bible refers to as old man thinking, the individual may look to this world here, the world made visible through the five senses from imagination, and seem to suggest to themselves that what is possible is based on what is made visible. As in, if they look at the kind of relationships their family has, if they look at the kind of relationships that people around them have, maybe they go on the internet and they see the kind of relationships that appear, they may think that they can only choose based on what they're witnessing through the five senses from imagination. What they may have forgotten, we could say, and no shame in condemnation, that the world made visible is made visible through the five senses from imagination, and that all things exist now as potential form in imagination, we could say. In other words, they don't need to look to this world to suggest who they should be with, the kind of relationships they should have, the kind of relationships they should desire. Maybe if they do that, they may shame and condemn themselves for having what they desire, desiring to experience that which they already have. As we always say, desire means having. Desire means being. Desire means I am. You simply found what you have in the form of desire. To prove it in equation, everything that you have ever desired, you have realized that you had, and then it appeared. In other words, you had the desire and acknowledged that desire means having. And then that experience was added onto you. It appeared to be added onto you. How was it added onto you? Well, personally, I don't worry about those details. As it also states in the Bible, my ways are past finding out. So I don't need to come up with theories or make up explanations and reason my way through this life unnecessarily. I'm actually a fan of reason. I have a computer science background. I had an IT business. I did 10 years in corporate IT. Yet I also understand that the technology that existed back then, we could say, is no longer relevant now, as in we have faster technology, more advanced technology, so much so that I haven't even been keeping up with the IT technology space. Yet now and then I do see what's going on. Back in the days, I used to keep up with it more so. Now, let's say it's not required for my current interests. So what I'm getting at is that kind of reason, or whatever reason we have right now, may be a limited reason. There's always a higher reason. And when we discover that higher reason, we can assume safely that there is a higher reason. Thus, as stated in the Bible, my ways are past finding out. Thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall come to pass. So practically speaking, how I apply all of this is I imagine myself to be in the kind of relationship that I desire to have. I imagine myself being with the particular kind of person I would like to be with, whether it be friendship, romantic relationship, business relationship, you name it, however you categorize relationships. I even imagine myself having the particular kind of experiences. Again, use your imagination. It could be personal relationships, business relationships, romantic relationships, family relationships, etc. I simply imagine myself having experienced that which I already desire. Thou shalt decree, that's the way it is, and then it appears. And sure enough, it does appear, some way, somehow. All I know is that I receive the desire within, and I acknowledge that desire means having. At times, I may imagine what that desire implies, and then it appears, in form, as what I imagine. And at times, I simply acknowledge that the desire means fulfillment, as in, anything that I desire, I could categorize as symbols of love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. And by that I mean very specifically, anything I imagine that I desire are symbols of love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. And they appear, as we could say, symbols, physical symbols of the being I am. Love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. I am fulfilled now, which means you are fulfilled now. We are fulfilled now. So anything I desire, that I am. Anything that you desire, that you are. Anything that you desire, you have. Anything that I desire, I have. To imagine otherwise would be unnecessary and unwise and would generate illusions of suffering, illusions of separation, which seems to play out as theater. No shame in condemnation. Thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall come to pass. So I simply accept that whatever it is that I desire in imagination is reality, and it comes to pass, as it is reality. Reality is, we could say, the fact that you exist is, you are real, aren't you? Thus, you are reality, and reality is beyond belief, beyond limitation, perfect, whole. Holiness in the Bible, holy means whole, complete, in every way possible. Thus, you actually need nothing. You simply play out that which you desire to experience, physical experiences, the experiences of life, we could say. Life as fulfillment, fulfilled life, perfect, unconditional love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, that you are. So what happens then is at times you may imagine that you have what you desire in a particular way, and then it appears. And then at times that desire means fulfillment. And that also plays out as interesting, wonderful life experiences, relationship experiences, since we're talking about relationships. Let's say, for example, you're walking down the street and you feel desire towards another person. Yet you choose not to imagine yourself being with that person. But yet you feel desire towards that person, and you might not know what that desire implies. Well, desire implies fulfillment. Desire means fulfillment. In that moment, thank you, I have. Thank you, I am what I desired. And then what's interesting is that perhaps during that day or at a particular point, you have a wonderful experience, and then you acknowledge that that is what you desired, even though in that particular moment when you saw that person, you didn't actually desire to be with that person, but you felt a desire to experience something, and you didn't know what that was, yet you accept it as fulfillment in that moment. It plays out as a fulfilling experience. So this is what I mean. You can imagine what your desire implies. Thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall come to pass. You can also accept that desire means fulfillment for no reason at all. No, we could say logical reason. And then it seems to play out as some kind of symbol of life, of the fulfillment of the desire. It could be something that you consider to be love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. So let's talk about my experiences of what appears on and as, we could say, the journey to actualizing that what I desire. So let's say I imagine myself to have a particular kind of experience with another person or group of people. Or I imagine myself having a particular kind of relationship, friendship, etc. Again, use your imagination. You don't need to look to this world for approval, validation, or confirmation of a limiting belief that does not belong to you, that belongs to the old man, as stated in the Bible. Put off the former conversation. Simply put off the former conversation by not identifying with the illusory thoughts that arise from that belief from the old man, and the belief is dissolved. So there's no need to look for confirmation of limiting beliefs, approval, validation, which again, that seeking behavior is the result of the illusion of lack of fulfillment. You are fulfilled now. The fact of existence, the fact that you exist is love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. You exist now as fulfillment for no logical reason at all, we could say. And thus you don't need approval, validation. So if you accept that you are fulfilled now, and really acknowledge the fact, really, that you are fulfilled now, then I trust you notice this as well. The seeking for approval, validation externally for what, let's say, the old man thinks is needing to be there in order to feel fulfilled, which is illusory, as it belongs to the old man, and you are not the old man, is dissolved. You no longer identify with that. And you are free in that regard to be as you are, to experience life the way you desire to experience life. No shame, no condemnation, as you exist beyond shame and condemnation. So, that's stated. I imagine myself, you can imagine yourself to be in a particular kind of relationship, have a particular kind of experience. Now, old man thinking may appear in mind and seem to suggest, but what about this, but what about that? If it's illusory thinking, very specifically, if it seems to suggest lack of love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, it's illusory thinking. It's literally unreal thinking. You are real, and reality is perfect, whole, complete, the good, perfect, pleasing will of God, as stated in Romans 12:2. Do not conform to the patterns of this world. So that kind of illusory thinking that appears in mind is what we can call patterns of this world. The world does not seem to suggest anything. It's the beliefs appearing in mind as thoughts that seem to suggest. And what are they suggesting? If they're suggesting lack of love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, that is not you really thinking. You really thinking is thinking from the premise of fulfilled desire, from the premise of being love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. In this regard, as this symbol, experiencing that which you desire in imagination, as all things exist now in imagination. And you can imagine anything. Yet you honestly, genuinely, earnestly, let's say, choose to experience what you desire. That makes a logical sense. You genuinely desire to experience in life what you desire. Thus, there's no need to suppress or repress desire. You experience life through what you desire, and it's made visible through the five senses from imagination, some way, somehow. I don't know. I have no interest, actually, in knowing or trying to figure out how it works. Because every time I see some kind of theory of how it works, then that theory is disproven, and I have lost interest in trying to figure out how it works, when in the Bible it states, "My ways are past finding out." I simply accept that what I desire is mine. Thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall come to pass. Like, that's the way it is, the way I imagine it is. So what happens then is, let's say you accept what you desire in imagination, as it is a symbol of your fulfillment. You found it in the form of desire. Now, it appears as a journey to actualizing the vision. And people may then concern themselves with time, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and some other things that I would like to explore with you today in the conversation. And it is clear that that is old man thinking. The old man thinking may seem to suggest that you lack something now. So the person then, let's say, appears to be in a rush. What's the rush? Everything plays out. Reality is in harmony with you. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So there's no need to worry, stress, or rush. That kind of worry, stress, rush, for example, arises from old man beliefs. Old man thinks in terms of separation. Thus, the beliefs of the old men are based on illusions of separation. And you are not the old man, so no shame and condemnation. If these kinds of thoughts appear in the mind, no longer identify with them. Put off the former conversation, as in don't identify with those thoughts. And then what happens is you remain in your flow. And so let's share some interesting experiences. Maybe you've noticed these kinds of experiences. Let's say I desire to have a particular kind of experience with another person. Let's say then I go about my life day to day. I may feel like talking to this person, or someone may call me, or I may end up in this event. Again, some way, somehow, everything flows, being in flow, naturally, ideally, automatically. I do what I appear to do, we could say, and then everything else is taken care of for me. You do what you intuitively feel like doing. You say, I listen to my intuition exclusively. I do not listen to the noise of the mental chatter, nor do I look to this world for opinions, suggestions, telling me what to do, not do, think, not think, etc., because there's no need for that. I listen exclusively to the intuitive guidance from within, and it may be presented in information from people, books, etc., or it may not. Yet I don't go seeking for that, because I already have. You already have what you desire. You have everything that you desire. You already are everything that you desire to be. So what happens then, and the benefit of doing that, let's say, is you are not swayed by opinions. See, because the opinions are not trying to sway you. It's illusory to think that the opinions, or what people say, etc., is swaying you, because only we can imagine what people seem to suggest. Only we can imagine what the words mean to us. Only we can imagine what they say means to us. And you can imagine anything. What we do is we practice walking by faith and not by sight. And simply put, if thoughts appear in mind in relation to what a person says, does, information, etc., that seems to suggest that you are not love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, don't identify with it. I simply listen to my intuition. Now, on the journey to actualizing this experience, which plays out, as I mentioned, what I practice is what I call mind purification, or bringing my meditation into living practice, or living meditation. I live the meditation practice. How so? If anyone seems to suggest otherwise, or information seems to suggest otherwise, I no longer identify with the thought that it seems to suggest otherwise. In other words, as I mentioned, only you can imagine what a person says and how you relate to what a person says, because the world made visible is made visible through the five senses from imagination. So, in other words, I imagine what the person says. If they seem to suggest otherwise, that's illusory thinking. That belongs to the old man. See, there is a space between the appearance and the imaginal activity, which we could say belongs to the old man. There's a space. You can choose to identify with that old man thinking if you would like or not. So you end up meeting people, you go on dates, and the people that you meet seem to have, let's say, 20% of what you desire to experience. And no shame and condemnation to them. No shame and condemnation to you. You let them be, you let yourself be. Reality is, we could say, rearranging to appear to be in your favor. As reality is happening to be in your favor, everything is happening for you in your favor. Thou shalt decree a thing, in some way, somehow, it shall come to pass. And that is God's ways, which again are past finding out. So what ends up happening then is the person may identify with that. They might say, okay, this person has 20% of the criteria of what I desire to have in a relationship, but 80% they don't. So they may start shaming and condemning themselves, thinking that something wrong with them, this is not working. And that is an indication of, we could say, an inharmonious relationship with God. Having a harmonious relationship with God is articulated in the Bible. I and the Father are one, yet the Father is greater than I. So the Father, being greater than I, has ways that, although I might not know, some way, somehow, play out in my favor. And this is also in my favor. So that is how we practically walk by faith and not by sight. So what happens then is, let's say you enjoy this date with this person, you have a wonderful time because you're not shaming and condemning, and you have a wonderful experience. Yet you earnestly feel that you choose not to go on a second date with that person. That's totally fine. So you don't force yourself to conform to the patterns, which again, the patterns of this world, we could say the world that appears, which is made visible through the five senses from imagination, is playing out the theater of what the individual is identified with. And as you are not the old man, you don't need to identify with thoughts of limitation. So in other words, practically speaking here, you don't have to physically force yourself to be in a relationship just because a person has, let's say, 20% of the criteria that you desire, and the rest is not a match. Again, no shame and condemnation to the other person, to you. You let them be, you let yourself be. Everything appears to be in harmony with you. And then let's say, and I've seen this happen many times, is that all of a sudden you meet someone, and maybe now they have 60% of the criteria. Again, it's up to you. You have the ability to choose to experience what you desire. So maybe you might choose to have that kind of relationship. It's totally up to you. What I have found personally is that, let's say, if I, again, repeat that same thing, let them be, enjoy the wonderful experience, let myself be, walk by faith, not by sight. In the Bible, it states, put off the former conversation, which belongs to the old man. So I follow that instruction. Very simple. Thou shalt decree a thing, it shall come to pass. Walk by faith, not by sight. Put off the former conversation which belongs to the old man. And childlike, you enjoy the journey to the destination, let's say, which the destination is that relationship. And then let's say afterwards, maybe after the date, maybe even right after this has happened to be, you meet someone, or all of a sudden, maybe a day or two later, again, I don't worry about time. That's illusory to worry about time. Worrying about time belongs to the old man, and you are not the old man. So if worry, thoughts of time, let's say, time limitation, thoughts of limitation appear in mind, no longer identify with them. Put off the former conversation. Mind purification. See, I take these opportunities for mind purification if they present themselves. They may present themselves, they may not. What I've found over the years is that as I have taken these opportunities for mind purification, when mind became purified from those limiting beliefs that are stored in the subconscious mind, is I no longer worried. I know how this works now very clearly. I trust you notice this more so as well as you've been applying this over the years, because we've been discussing this over the years as well. So what ends up happening then is you meet this person and it's the exact kind of relationship that you desire. It is the exact kind of experience that you have that you once imagined playing out right now in a mutually harmonious way. And as it is completely playing out, we could say, exactly what you desire to experience in imagination, what you once desired to experience in imagination, more accurately put, that you have fulfilled. You have acknowledged that you are fulfilled. In other words, you found it in the form of desire. There's no suffering afterwards. There's no side effects. And if there is, then there's opportunity for mind purification. You can bring awareness to that belief and release identification to that belief. So, in summary, people appear out of nowhere, we could say, the way you imagine them to be. I personally recommend not looking to this world for opinions, for approval, validation, or confirmation of if you should go after, we could say, what you desire. Have what you desire. Because, let's say, an individual is identified with the old man. The theater may play out as shaming and condemning based information that seems to suggest that you should not have what you desire. That having what you desire is bad. It will result in suffering. Not my experience. If it results in suffering afterwards, and we had this conversation recently, in a recent video, this person that I know, a friend of mine, he was suggesting that if he has what he desires, he experiences what he desires, thus from having what he desires, he found it in the form of desire, that is going to result in a bunch of suffering afterwards. We then discovered that that was a belief that he had, a dogmatic belief. When he released identification to that belief, he acknowledged that desire means having. Desire points to the fact that he is fulfilled, and he allowed himself, we could say, to experience what he desire. Thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall come to pass. And not only did he experience what he desired physically, there was no suffering afterwards, because he had purified the subconscious mind from those beliefs that are dichotomous beliefs, the dogmatic beliefs that suggest this or that, which is illusory, and thus no longer generating those illusory experiences of suffering. So on the journey to actualizing that which you have imagined, which this world is made visible through the five senses for you, actualizing that vision, it's God's play. If there are opportunities for mind purification so that you can walk by faith, not by sight, you can take them. And even if you go on dates, for example, and it does not seem to play out as that kind of relationship that you imagined, enjoy the dating experience. If there's mind purification opportunities from the dating experience, take the mind purification opportunities. I recommend it. It results in you remaining in flow on these dates. It results in a flow-based journey to actualizing your vision. As I always say, The journey does not have to be one of suffering. It could be flow-based, bliss-based. We could say blissful journey to actualizing your bliss on the way to eternal bliss, if you would like to say it that way. I like to say it that way. So now, simply put, thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall come to pass. You don't need to look to this world for approval, validation, or confirmation of limiting beliefs. That's illusory. That seem to suggest otherwise, that you don't have what you desire. Simply accept what you desire as fulfilled, like that's the way it is. And then it is on the journey to, or you appear to be on the journey, we could say, actualizing some way, somehow. I don't worry about how. I don't come up with theories how. My ways are past finding out, it says in the Bible. God's ways are past finding out. So I have no interest in trying to figure it out because, as I mentioned, if I try to come up with some kind of theory, it could lead to more confusion because then the theory is proven wrong and this theory, that theory. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I simply don't think unnecessarily. Now, this not thinking unnecessarily or walking by faith, we could say, is the result of taking the opportunities, from my experience, for mind purification. That's why I value it. I value the journey and the destination because the journey is, we could say, a place where opportunities may be presented for mind purification. Now, what can happen at times, I've noticed this, doubts may play out as theater, beliefs may play out as theater, and some of them may be, again, as mentioned, this person doesn't match the criteria, this is not working. That's okay. That is not you really thinking. That's old man thinking. Put off those former conversations. Mind is purified. And the relationships appear to transform. And then you have what you experience in imagination, in physical form, be it that particular kind of relationship experience, that particular kind of relationship. And again, this can be applied in personal life, business life, romantic life, you name it. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You can say, I already have what I desire. I found it in the form of desire. What I desire, that I am. What I desire, that I have. Thou shalt decree a thing, and it shall come to pass. As I walk by faith, I allow things to unfold. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven, in a flow-based, mutually harmonious way, as reality appears to be in harmony with me. This appears more so with increasing frequency on a continuous basis as far as the senses perceive, to physically experience that which I found in the form of desire.